My husband reconnected with his ex behind my back, then ditched me to help her, came home covered in lipstick, and acted shocked when I walked out. I'm a 32-year-old woman, and I've been married to my husband, who's 38, for the past 3 years. Like most couples, we've had our share of ups and downs, but overall, we're pretty happy together. That said, when we first started seeing each other about 5 years ago, things weren't exactly smooth. I found out later that he was also involved with another woman named Angela, who was 24 at the time. I had no clue she even existed back then. When I eventually discovered the truth, I brought it up with him. He told me that since we hadn't made our relationship official yet, he didn't think we were exclusive. I made it clear right then that if he didn't cut off contact with Angela, I was done. We left it at that and didn't talk for a while. A few weeks later, he showed up unannounced at my apartment. He told me he had ended things with Angela and that he wanted a real shot with me. He asked me to be his girlfriend, and from that point on, we started building something more serious. Since then, things between us have been pretty normal. Sure, we have our occasional arguments like anyone else, but I've always believed he was my soulmate. That was true until recently, when something stirred things up again, and of course, it involved Angela. About 3 weeks ago, we were out running errands and stopped at a new little boba shop that had just opened next to our regular grocery store. As we stood off to the side checking out the menu, I noticed someone walk in who looked way too much like Angela. I glanced again, and yeah, it was definitely her. I felt this sudden wave of panic wash over me. I was desperately hoping my husband didn't notice her. But just as I was trying to keep my cool, I heard a woman call out my husband's name. It was her. Angela. He turned around, and they exchanged a quick, awkward chat. Meanwhile, I sort of just zoned out, staring into the distance, hoping the whole thing would end quickly. Then she looked at me and asked him, "Is that your wife?" He nodded and grabbed my hand, and I gave her the most uncomfortable smile I could muster. She eventually got in line ahead of us, and we ended up waiting behind her. I was dying of embarrassment the whole time. The moment we got our drinks, I told my husband we were leaving. That was that until 2 weeks ago. One evening, I noticed his phone light up with a Facebook Messenger notification. He rarely uses that app, so I casually asked who it was from. He brushed it off, saying it was just an old friend. When I pressed a little more, he said I wouldn't know them. I didn't think too much of it at the time, just a flicker of suspicion, really. A few days later, while I was using his phone to order food, another messenger notification popped up. This time, I saw the name, Angela. I froze. Confused and kind of rattled, I opened their conversation. Everything looked friendly and light on the surface, but knowing their past, it made me deeply uncomfortable. I couldn't shake the feeling that something about it wasn't right. I asked him straight up why she was messaging him. He told me that after we bumped into her, she had sent him a friend request on Facebook and they'd started talking again. He swore it was harmless. I told him I didn't want him keeping in contact with her. He promised he'd stop. I asked him to unfriend her, and although he hesitated, he eventually did it. After that, there was nothing from her until last night. From what I can piece together, she started spamming his phone with messages and even called him crying. Apparently, her mother is really sick, and since my husband had known her mom back then, he felt bad for her. She told him she had no one else and begged him to just be there for her. What I didn't know was that he said yes. I only found out when I caught him slipping on his shoes near the front door. I asked him where he was headed, and that's when he told me what was going on with Angela and her mom. I told him I didn't want him to go, and that led to a heated back and forth. He seemed determined to leave anyway, so I physically blocked the door and told him that if he stepped out to comfort his ex-girlfriend, he shouldn't bother coming back. He scoffed and pushed past me. I just stood there, watching him walk out. Then I went inside, poured myself a few drinks, and tried not to cry. I kept checking my phone but stopped myself from texting him over and over. 3 hours later, he finally returned. I was sitting on the couch when he walked through the door. I didn't say anything except to tell him he couldn't sleep here tonight. That set off another argument. He said he had nowhere else to go, and I told him maybe he should crash at Angela's since they seemed to get along so well. He left again, and I haven't heard a single word from him since. Right now, I'm wide awake, buzzed, and trying to hold myself together. That's why I turned to Reddit. Maybe I overreacted, maybe I didn't. I honestly can't tell anymore. I just need some advice. I feel lost. I'm sorry this is so long, I really needed to let it out. Edit, hey everyone, wow, thank you so much for the support and kind words. I'm going through the comments now. Just a small update, I eventually passed out and called in sick to work this morning. It's 2 p.m. now, and I've just been sleeping on and off, kind of drifting through the day. Still no word from him. He hasn't come home, and his phone location has been off since last night. I might send him a message later just to check if he's okay, but I'm not sure if I should. I'm definitely not in the right headspace and feel like I'm stuck in some kind of fog. Everything happens so fast, I still don't feel like I've fully grasped it all. I'll update you all if anything changes. Again, thank you for listening. And then came the message that shook me the most, a suicide note. Now, I'm not sure what's allowed to be said here on Reddit, but the gist is that my husband responded to her out of what he claimed was genuine concern. According to him, their conversations had mostly centered around her mental health, addiction, self-harm, and some really heavy stuff. As I kept reading their messages, I found out something that stunned me. Angela has a boyfriend, and he's 51 years old. My husband told me he managed to calm her down, and for a while, they stopped talking. But then she reached out again, and the same cycle repeated. She'd guilt-trip him into replying, and he'd cave. Eventually, I found out about all of this and told him to block her. He didn't. He admitted he was afraid to, though he also said he stopped replying to her messages until that night. She had sent him a bunch of disturbing texts and then called him on Messenger. He answered, and apparently, she was hysterical, crying and screaming in pain. She told him she'd tried to overdose on pills because she couldn't handle her mom's illness. That's why he rushed over to her place. But when he got there, he said something felt off. She was acting weird, almost like she was pretending. He tried to take her to the hospital, but she flat out refused. After begging her to go, he finally threatened to call emergency services, and that's when she admitted she never actually took anything. He asked her why she would lie like that, and she didn't have a real answer. He was about to leave, but she pleaded with him to stay and listen. She told him that her mom was the only person who ever cared about her, and now that she was sick, she felt like she had no one left except my husband. She claimed he wouldn't have come if it hadn't sounded urgent. He started to get suspicious and straight up asked her if her mom was even sick. She hesitated, then denied it, but he said she looked like she was lying. So, he left. He told me he didn't go back to her place again. Instead, he said he just sat in his car for a while, grabbed something to eat, and wandered around town before eventually coming home. That's when the argument between us happened. He said he was mentally exhausted and didn't have the energy to explain everything in that moment. After hearing all of that, I just felt drained. I tend to need time to think before I react, so I told him I needed space. I didn't talk to him at all until the next morning. Then I let him know I'd be staying at my parents' place for a few days. Well, a few days ended up turning into a full week. As soon as I got there, I caught some kind of bug and have been sick ever since. I haven't even had the strength to drive back home, let alone figure out what to do about my marriage. Honestly, I'm still stuck. I don't know how we're supposed to just go back to normal. Even if he didn't technically cheat, I feel betrayed. I don't trust him anymore, and I'm not even sure if he's telling me the truth. A divorce feels like a big, dramatic leap for something that technically isn't cheating, but it also doesn't feel small. Tomorrow, I have to go back home. I'm starting to feel a little better physically, and I know I can't avoid things forever. I've got responsibilities to get back to. Being with my family has helped. It's been a relief not to have to deal with everything alone. I haven't had much communication with my husband, just a few texts here and there, so tomorrow will be the first time we actually see each other face to face in over a week. I'm anxious about it. What actually reminded me to write this update was something really odd. I got a message request on Instagram earlier today from some random burner account. It was a photo, and I was nervous to even open it. My gut told me it might be connected to Angela, and honestly, that scared me more than I want to admit. Update, I opened it. It was a screenshot from what looks like Angela's private story, her in lingerie, with a caption that read, "She'll just have to taste me when she's kissing him." That hit like a truck. Update 2, hey again. I know it's been a while, sorry I didn't update sooner. A lot's happened, and it's been exhausting. But I finally have a bit of time and clarity to catch you all up. After I got home, my husband wasn't there, he was still at work. I debated whether to confront him right away, but I felt weak, still kind of sick, and really didn't want to deal with an emotional showdown. So I just went to bed. The next morning, we finally talked. It started out with awkward small talk over breakfast. He was trying to be sweet, he even bought me coffee before I woke up. That part felt nice. I didn't want to blow up the situation too much, so I calmly brought up the picture from Angela's story. He seemed weirdly offended and asked to see it. I showed it to him, and he just shrugged it off, saying something like, "It's just lyrics from a song. It doesn't mean anything." We went back and forth for a bit, I honestly don't remember the exact words anymore, but eventually, I just dropped it. The next day, I returned to work. And over the following few days, our home life became a battleground. We argued about Angela almost constantly. The only time we weren't fighting was when we weren't speaking at all, which, to be fair, was about 90% of the time. I know it was immature, but I was furious and not ready to fix anything yet. Divorce still felt like overkill since I didn't have any solid proof of cheating, just a deep unease and suspicions that wouldn't go away. In a weird way, work became my escape. I'm a receptionist at a small, independently owned office. I've been there for 5 years, and it's honestly been my favorite job. The pay's good, my coworkers are great, my boss is fantastic, and even though I occasionally get yelled at over the phone, I really do love it there. Then one day, out of nowhere, the prank calls started. But the strange part about those prank calls? They didn't stop. They started happening every single day, like clockwork. It was always someone screaming into the phone and then hanging up. We were told not to say anything first, just let the caller speak, so we followed that rule. After a few days of that nonsense, the prank calls suddenly stopped. But instead, we began getting calls from different people asking to speak directly with our boss, which was unusual. That kind of request was rare before, but now it was happening several times a day. My boss was busy most of the time, so he just let those go to voicemail. Then one evening, right as I was getting ready to clock out, he asked me to stay for a bit. He wanted to have a private chat in his office. When I sat down, he played me a series of voicemails he'd received. Each one was a complaint about me. All different voices. People saying I was rude or unprofessional or worse. I didn't recognize a single one. I told him that, and he admitted he didn't think the complaints were real either, but he asked me to keep an eye out and see if I could figure out who was behind them. From that point forward, we had a new rule: if anyone called asking for the boss, we had to get their full name and phone number. Some gave it, others didn't. But no matter what we did, the calls kept coming and they were always about me. Every hour, it seemed like another person was calling in to say something bad. Eventually, my boss told me to just take a few days off, hoping the calls would stop. But they didn't. Those few days turned into a full week, and then I got the call. I was fired. From what my coworkers told me later, the calls kept coming, and my boss was just overwhelmed by the hassle of having to respond to each one. He figured it was easier to let me go than keep dealing with it. I can't prove it, but I'm almost certain this was Angela's doing, or at least her and her friends. They wanted to ruin my life, and honestly, they succeeded. That week at home drove me nuts. I was stuck under the same roof with my husband, and all I wanted to do was scream at him. We barely spoke. He slept on the couch, and I stayed in the bedroom. One night, I saw him scrolling through Instagram in the dark, and from the hallway, I could tell he was looking at Angela's profile. That was it for me. I was exhausted, emotionally done, and I snapped. I went off on him. He tried to justify it by saying he just wanted to check in on her, that it didn't mean anything. I told him I had just lost my job, and that I suspected she was behind it. His response? He told me I was being paranoid, that Angela would never do something like that. I didn't even have the energy to argue anymore. I just stopped talking to him. And maybe that's why he thought it was okay to come home one night reeking of alcohol, with smeared lipstick on his shirt and glitter all over him. We had another huge fight, and he stormed out. He didn't come back for days. Then one day, he sent me flowers and my favorite takeout with a handwritten note that said, "I'm sorry. I love you." He showed up later that evening looking like a wreck, saying he needed to explain. I let him talk. He said he was overwhelmed by how bad things had gotten between us and just wanted a break from it all. He told me he went out with some friends for drinks, and that some girl kissed him and was all over him, but that he pushed her away and felt disgusted afterward. I still don't know if I believe that. I asked him directly about Angela, if he was still in contact with her. He said no, that she had messaged him a few more times, but he only saw her once. When I pressed further, I asked if they'd ever slept together. He said no, but admitted that she kissed him and he turned her down. We talked about a lot that night. I asked a bunch of questions about our relationship, and honestly, some of his answers hurt more than I expected. That's when I told him I needed a break. I asked for a separation, just some space to breathe and think. He broke down crying, literally dropped to his knees, begging me not to leave him. But I had already made up my mind. I packed a few bags while he sat there apologizing over and over. I didn't respond. I walked out. It's been 2 weeks now. I've been staying at my parents' place. I finally told them everything that's happened, and to say they hate him would be putting it lightly. He's been showing up at their house almost every day trying to talk to me, but my parents won't even let him near the door. They live one town over, and somehow he's still managed to send food, flowers, gift cards, you name it. I've gotten it through DoorDash. It's relentless. He's even gotten his family involved, and some of my extended relatives too. I've been getting spam calls and messages from them, trying to convince me to talk to him. I've blocked every number I can, but it keeps happening. Honestly, I'm exhausted. I've begged him to stop contacting me, but clearly, that message didn't land. Right now, I'm leaning toward divorce, but I'm not quite ready yet. I still feel like I'm in a daze, like this whole thing isn't even real. I need time to think, to heal, to just figure out what I want without the pressure of his begging or anyone else's opinions. Another option I'm considering is therapy. Maybe we could go together and try to salvage something, but even that feels like a long shot. Right now, I'm just trying to find a job near my parents' place so I can stay here for a while and slowly start moving forward on my own. As for Angela, I haven't mentioned her much because I genuinely don't want to know anything about her. I don't care if he's still talking to her or not. I just want her out of my life, for good. I don't think there'll be another update after this, because our relationship is basically over. Still, I want to say thank you to everyone who reached out, who left advice, who supported me through this chaos. I truly mean it, I'm forever grateful.